something well, I had to really motivate everybody around me to do well. It took a lot of learning. It's not something that came easily to me. And so it's a journey, like a lot of other things. So that's just something.
Thank you. It's always wonderful when people share with such honesty their journeys. I learn every day from all of you. Sunita.
Thank you, Naina. I mean, obviously, for me, the role of my mother was all encompassing. I mean, she brought us all up, and I've often been asked in the work we do that two questions are often asked of me. One, what does it feel like as a woman, and are you disadvantaged as a woman, and do you feel that and I know that Indian women are very disadvantaged, and I know it's very tough for Indian women to succeed in what they do because of all the challenges and all the problems that they have to face. But quite honestly, I said this also in the book, that I never felt that, because I grew up in a household of women, and I saw my mother beating every odd to do what she did. And so I just feel very, very privileged, and I always feel that I would do disservice by saying, oh, it's so difficult to do anything in life. I mean, I've seen it so much more difficult to do things that that's never been something that has been something that has held me back. The other question I'm always asked is, do you feel afraid? Aren't you scared about taking on everybody from Coca-Cola to the diesel manufacturers and the pesticide walas and everyone else? I mean, and again, I have to be very honest with you that I don't. And the reason is because of what Naina said. If you work with the sense of both integrity as well as commitment and passion, and you tend to say what you're doing is as right as you know it can be. It doesn't come through, you're not doing it because of malice, you're not doing it because of anything to do to hurt anybody. You're doing it because you think it is the right thing to do. And that you're open, and that's where the humility comes in, that you're open to revising your opinion if new facts come your way. So you do not take on work with either the dogma, or you don't take on work out there to hurt anybody. And if you do that with that commitment, in that sense, I think it's been a relatively, it's been a tough journey, but I cannot complain. I think I've enjoyed most of the journey up till now, and I hope I will continue to enjoy the rest. But the only thing is that we should all very clearly know that we will only enjoy it if we can clean up Delhi's air. So that has to be a common purpose behind everything we do.
That's why we need more Sunitas around, right? It's the only way we'll get CNG in, which she had worked very hard towards, and clean up Delhi's air yet again.
Thank you so much, Naina. As was mentioned in the introductory remarks, I'm the oldest here. I'm going to be 71 this year, and it seems so long ago. That I appeared for the civil services. I was very often asked, why did you choose the civil service? It was a very positive decision for me. I was young, I was idealistic. I was young and I was idealistic, and I thought that joining the civil services would give me an opportunity to make a difference. Years later, when I look back, one has had ups and downs, but I think I feel satisfied that in my small little way, in some and many of the posts, I have been able to make a difference. And I think what was very important for me also is that my career was so linked up with my personal growth, because as I worked, experiences that I saw. For example, when I first joined the health sector, I realized it exposed me to so many things. This is just one example. It showed me that I worked with doctors, who were outstanding. I also saw work that was being the frontiers of technology and knowledge but also one saw the extent of human suffering in those wards and the hospitals. And then you realize that what are you cribbing about? I worked, being in the UT Cadre, I worked in many different places, in Arunachal and in Chandigarh, in Goa. So all these are very enriching experiences, and I think that I also evolved with it. If I had a choice, I would probably join the civil services again. You know, when I joined it, the world was a very different place. The leaders were men of great stature. And remember, I grew up in Patna. My father himself was a civil servant. So he had an enormous influence in my life. And he neither encouraged me nor discouraged me to join the services. But at a young age, we used to sometimes go on tours with him. And I saw the passion and commitment with which he talked to people. And, you know, he dealt with problems. But there was a lot of compassion also. You know, and when I joined the services, it sounds a little, I don't know, I should say it, because he said, just remember two things, that the ends are as important as the means, and do unto others as you would to yourself. At a young age, one is put in positions of authority as a subdivisional magistrate, but use it for public good. I think that's what he did. So this, I hope, to the best of my ability, I tried to do that. Ambition is very important. But I think all of us, I haven't written it in my book, but you know, ambition to me really means, your determination to excel. It's not to cut corners and reach ambition for oneself. And sometimes you can't be that ambitious if the cost is too high, it's not affordable. Because you have to find a work-life balance. You know, health, happiness, especially, and the well-being of people closest to you, especially your children. You know, somewhere those are also essential elements, and they temper your life. I have written at length in my book about gender. I've done it for two reasons. One is, of course, we never faced any gender discrimination. We were 3 girls and a boy, brought up in a family where my mother went to England. She was one of the very early people who went there. So she was also a very empowered person. And I didn't even realize that there was such a major gender problem really till I joined the services. You know, the statistics capture it, but when you put it into real life situation, it's horrendous. As a magistrate, as an officer, I've seen that, you know, it's something which is totally unacceptable, and there's a lot of social injustice still. So I've given some instances of what I saw. And of course, a great deal has been done. People have become more aware. The laws have become stronger. And but I still say that though I may have retired from service, I would never retire so far as, you know, ensuring gender justice is concerned.
So very varied backgrounds, very varied childhoods, but many common threads, as you hear. And for all the fathers out there, clearly the role you have to play, and my dream would be 50% of the bringing up of a child is as much the fathers as the mothers, and the influence of those fathers in all our lives. And Sunita, you didn't mention the grandfather, but the male influence in our lives is as important as the female. And mothers clearly strong, but fathers too. So do make sure, for those of you who get married, that you choose your husbands well, that they let you continue to do what you are doing, but that they also do their fair share of what needs to be done at home. Yeah. And I think Devjani actually says this. It's a career choice. Yeah. Choice of husband. So let's move to a very important area, one which we've been asked a lot at some of these panel discussions we've been having across the country, and that's on work-life balance. So how do you juggle work and family? And I like to describe this as 2 crystal balls. You can't let either of those balls drop because they will smash to smithereens. The one of work and the other of family. And both are equally important to you. And the third is what I call me time, which I would treat as a rubber ball, which you allow to drop and it bounces around and you pick it up when you can. And it gives you a little more flexibility. So work-life balance. Bharti, why don't we start with you and how you arrived at it? And you're very frank in your book in terms of how you negotiated this with your husband as well.
So I'm also a student of physics. And those of you who've studied physics will know that balance is transient. You know, you can find balance for a split second, and then, you know, entropy takes over again. So, so I think the end result is, as Nana says, you find some balance sometimes. But I went through a really, really difficult time after my daughter was born. And I think it's, you know, when I look back on it, it really had to do with what I wanted to do. I wanted to do everything perfectly. I wanted to continue with I was on a partner track in PwC, so I wanted to make partner the fastest. I am one of the youngest partners in the firm, but I didn't want to let go of that. I wanted to be a perfect mother. I wanted to be a really good wife. I wanted to be a good daughter. And, you know, my house must look spanking clean. It was crazy. And you cannot do all of it, not all the time. You can do some of it, some of the time, but you cannot do it all the time. And it took me 3 long years to figure this out. And then it was actually a book which helped me to do that. You know, it's a long story about the book, but basically after reading it, I realized that I have to do 2, 3 things. I have to prioritize. I cannot do everything. So I prioritize my life around my work and my daughter. And I said, okay, everything else I'll do if I have the time for it, you know. So I stopped going for all my husband's social things. I stopped trying to turn up for friends' things. You know, you just have to prioritize. And the second thing I did is that, you know, I realized that in one generation, I had, and other women like me, had basically begun to do a whole bunch of things that women in the previous generation never did. What obviously hadn't happened, and I didn't notice it, is that my husband was not brought up to take up all the things that I couldn't do because I was doing something else. So he wasn't brought up to, you know, take care of baby or take care of house or, you know, take care of groceries or any such thing. And so he was quite happy to do anything you told him to do, but it would not come to him naturally. So, you know, so I said, okay, I have to recognize that it will take 3 generations. At the same time, you know, I have to sit this man down and say, you know, I mean, there are some things you have to do. So, I mean, but anyway, I'm sure everybody goes through it. But for me, it was a very painful experience to go through it. But we got there finally.
You can see she succeeded. Yeah. Obviously married to a nice guy who learned well.
I should mention that I am married to the most liberal man I know. And I know many liberal men, so.
Vinita?
Thank you. Like Bharti, you know, my husband also didn't, he also is a very liberal, very supportive spouse. But you know, I think with bringing up children, I think his role was more, what book would you like to read? Would you like me to help you with maths? I had a young woman who came when I was born, you can imagine how many 100 years ago that was, continued to be with me till 2009 when she passed away at the age of 80 something. So I had this great stable I, as my children used to call it at home. But you know, you really have to find a work-life balance. It is extremely difficult. When you're a young officer right at the bottom of the hierarchy, people don't at all appreciate if you say my child has a cough or cold or something, and can I stay back or has a fever. So I think all of us go through it. I think what I would say is that what I actually did was that I tried to spend as much quality time as possible. My social life was almost zero, except occasionally on the weekends. I think there is no other way. I think you need that. But you know, I also felt that once you're at work, there's no point whining, and you put your child first when the child needs you. But I think, you know, when you're at work, you really have to, at least in the sort of career that I did, to be able to, you know, set that aside. But children are paramount, and I took some 2 or 3 decisions about which I've written in my book, because I found that there was no way I would compromise with my time with them. When I spent a year at Oxford and I took them with me. By then my mother was here and she said, but you know, I'm also here. And my husband said, are you going there to study or are you going to get back to looking after them because they were very young. But I felt it was much better to have them with me. And I think in hindsight, I took the right decision. They were in school till the whole day, and I did my work, and my tutors there were good enough to be able to adjust my time. I've written about this in my book. In our services, the Prime Minister's office, getting an opportunity to work in the Prime Minister's office is a big thing. I have colleagues here who would agree with me. So once in '87, I was asked to join the Prime Minister's office as Joint Secretary. I just felt that I wouldn't be able to do justice to my work and the children, so I actually declined this. I met Ms. Sarla Grewal and I told her. She was very understanding and she understood this. But I had so many colleagues, good friends of mine, who said, but tell us the real reason why you didn't join. It really was that I felt with a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old, and the 7-year-old had a major eye problem, so I felt that, I put the children first. I think that was very important. You have to take these decisions. There are regrets later. But I think it was such a spontaneous decision. And I have to say that I don't know how many of you know Mrs. Sarla Grewal. Later, she wrote a very good note, and Mr. Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister. So I think these sort of things you just have to do. So when your child needs you, put the child first. But don't carry, what I always felt was, don't carry all your little minor problems to your work. People really don't like you whining. I don't think it's professional, I've said that. But if it comes to a push and a shove, I think you put the child first. I feel in a way, I think my children did what they did on their own. But my daughter topped her school exams. I think it was because of her. But she went to Caltech, then she went to Berkeley, and now she's teaching at MIT. My son did equally well. He had a minor disadvantage. He's working, he decided to become a lawyer. Interestingly, neither of the children joined the civil services. I don't know whether that's a reflection on me or the civil services, but I have to admit that's a bit of a confession. So somewhere I couldn't inspire them enough. Thank you.
Well, so, the other common theme that comes through is the support structures. The institution of the mother-in-law. So for everyone who thinks that the mother-in-laws are the pain in the necks, actually, she's an institution. In many of these homes, the children were left with the mother-in-law because you were living in a family where the mother-in-law lived with you or you lived with her. So that's interesting. You mentioned the old family retainer. I had the same advantage. My sister's in the audience here today. And the same lady who was with us from when we were 2 and 3 years old came and helped me out with my daughter, which was fabulous. I mean, even the fact that she was at home gave me so much comfort. And of course, mothers, sisters, bosses. I had my boss's wife used to keep an eye on my ayah and kid when they were playing in the park, and I would get a call saying, do you know what your ayah is doing now? And it's wonderful. There's stories here of, in fact, Kritika, I think, talks about her time at Stanford where her tutors babysat her kid. So you can be amazed the kind of support structures you get if you're nice to people. So it's all about figuring out who